welcome to the channel. I'm Summer. We are back with another haircut tutorial, and this time on a live model. I am so excited. And before we get started, I want to ask you all to let me know in the comments if this type of video is something you'd like to see more of with a live model. I really want to be able to give you guys the videos that you want and I need feedback. Would you like to see real clients in these videos? And if so, do you want me to keep it similar to how I've always done? Or do you want to hear from the client as to what their issues are with their hair, what they're looking for in a cut, while still giving you the same directions and explanation as I've always done? So please, please, please leave a comment below. It means a lot. Thanks for supporting and watching the channel. Let's get this cut started. Okay, so my model Alicia here, we're gonna be creating more of an actual true lob style. So you can see her length here is longer and she sort of has this light shelf of a layer here. So what we're essentially gonna be doing is cutting that off so that way it blends. And then when we add in some more softer layers, she wants to see movement but not have them quite visible. It'll blend in. And then along the sides here, we'll have a light angle, but it'll just be blending into where her face framing meets. And then like I said, we'll continue to keep our layers going through the top, but keep them nice and soft. And then you'll notice on this other side where she wears her part, she does have a little bit more face framing than the other side, but the lob's definitely gonna blend in the cut a lot better overall. And then from the front, we're just gonna have a nice look all together. So I'm gonna get her washed and then we'll get to cutting. Okay, so we have her sectioned off here. I've just got her split from her ear forward on both sides of the head, and then the back I'm gonna do 2 separate quadrants just to keep it clean when I go to create my perimeter. And because this cut, we're gonna be blending in what she previously had where her layers are a little disconnected, I'm actually leaving out a portion of her top layer here to help me set my guide for the back. So that way it gives me a great example of how short or long to leave it. I am gonna be bringing it up just a little bit because again, we're creating a light angle going towards the front. But this is a great tip for if you have a client in Alicia's predicament, use that top layer as your guide. And go ahead and look down for me. Okay, so I've got her head positioned down and I'm gonna take this piece of hair from her top layer and we're just gonna use it to sort of set my guide. I'm gonna angle my fingers up a little bit. So I'm gonna comb down. I can see the point of that previous layer here. I've got my fingers at a light angle. I'm just gonna come over and cut. And so what that does, that sets the guide here for the other side, and I'm just gonna continue to follow that pattern through. Along the middle, I'm gonna go a little bit more straight across. And then when I come back to this side, you're gonna do angling again. And so then what we'll do at this point, we'll check our corners. I bring them to the middle. Got a little bit more length on this side, just barely, and I'll nip that. And then we'll take down our next section. And you guys know I always like to do small enough sections to see through to your guide. This is especially key really with any haircut, but especially with like a lob bob style cut. Do you want it pretty, do you like a little bit of a roundness or do you like it more kind of just a nice straight, like not stacked, but where it's a little soft?
Yeah, I think I do. What do you think?
I would do it. Just, you don't want it stacked, but it helps soften it up, especially with the elongating. So continue to look down. And then we are gonna be creating just the slightest stack. I don't like to use the word stack with a lob because it scares away, I feel like, a lot of people from one. They feel like it's more of like a bob style. So you're just gonna lightly bring the hair out. So instead of like with a true stack, I would bring it out at a heavier angle, but for this, you're just lightly pulling out from the head. Make sure you can see your guide and we're gonna cut. And I'm gonna be doing a little bit of a point cut just to keep it soft. I don't wanna do like a super hardcore blunt line, but not a really deep point cut because her hair is finer in texture. I wanna make sure the perimeter still looks nice and full. And then remember to keep your hands at an angle because again, we're creating just the slightest angle moving into our front. And I usually like to have the client keep their head tilted till right about this occipital bone point. So after I cut this last section, we'll then move into her looking straight ahead. So again, just lightly pull that hair off from her shoulders and cut. Okay, you can go ahead and look straight forward. And usually another thing I'll tell clients, I'm like, just look normal. And they normally get that because straightforward, sometimes I feel like people like look up or not up enough. And I'm like, just look normal. Have you had your hair shorter before?
Yeah, a couple years ago, I used to always have it kind of in like a lob or a bob.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I kind of go back and forth. I grow it out.
Yeah.
And cut it.
That's what I always do. Like I was doing my longer layer or my long hair with the layers and I liked it. It was fun, but I'm like, I just miss it shorter.
Yeah.
I always go back to it being shorter.
Yeah.
So you do want to continue as you're moving up this back perimeter to periodically check your back corners to make sure that they're meeting up, and that way you can correct it before moving into your sides. So I'm going to do that really quick. Okay, so we have just a little bit of offness still here on the right side, which is just probably for me overextending over while cutting. And I'll just even that out. And then I'm just gonna drop this last section here. I gotta make sure I move out my layer that I grabbed from my guide so I don't cut that. And comb this straight down. And then at this point, you don't need to lift the hair out. You can just bring it down because you're not worrying about that elevation. I can see my guide underneath and cut. Okay. So I can see right now we have a little bit of like a flip, not a flip, but where it curves here on her neck. So I'll wait to dry it and see if I need to maybe shorten up at the very base a few pieces, because sometimes it's only in the nape that you need to worry about that. But always wait to see how it falls once it's dry. And then now we're gonna start creating our layers in the back. You can go ahead and look normal. So again, we match this up to where her top layer is on her sides. So Alicia's expressed she doesn't want a ton of layers anymore, but we still want to create enough shape and movement here so that way when you go to style it, you get a little bit more volume and height, especially through the top. So what I'm gonna do is I just come right in the middle. And if you guys have watched the channel, you've probably seen me do this before on mannequins, but I'm gonna be doing the same thing here on real human hair. And we're just gonna come straight up with it. I'm angling. And you're gonna let that fall. And I'm just gonna point cut into this top. So this creates a longer layer, but you're not gonna be taking out too much length, but you'll have just a little bit, the most little amount of movement. And then usually once it's dry, I'll come in to this very top piece and soften it up more. I just like to see it dry first to make sure I'm not cutting out too much length or weight. And then I'm gonna be rounding with her head all the way around on each side. It's gonna be a traveling layer. Do you like it texturized at all a little bit? Like done to help create like a little bit more volume or no?
Yeah, I think so. Okay. What do you think?
I like to do it. A lot of times I'll just do it with my scissors, like cutting in. I can show you. Cause yeah, a lot of people freak out when they hear the word like the thinning shears and texturizing shears, but if it's done right, it does really help to add. I would do it and it won't be where it's like overwhelming at all. It'll just help soften it up a little bit. So again, you wanna make sure all that bottom hair falls out. We've got our hands twisted up, like your knuckles are to the ceiling, and point cut in to the top of the head. So why I like to do the layers specifically this way is because it helps you remove a little bit of that weight underneath, which a lot of people, even with like the finest or thinnest hair, it's always the underneath part that sometimes, especially in the back, gets like more of that bulky feel. But the top is a little bit more like fine or thin. So this allows you to remove a little bit of weight and kind of have like internal layers, so to speak, but you're not cutting into that very top layer quite as much. So now that we have the back done, what we're gonna do is we're gonna start our sides. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna let down the hair, but again, we're doing sections. There is no way in hell I'm gonna go and take this and cut it all off in one swoop. So I'm gonna come in and take a section with it angling just slightly down. So we're gonna comb straight down. Okay, so we've combed straight down, and then you wanna remember your first original guide here. This was her top layer. So that's gonna fall in line so perfectly. I'm gonna try to angle just a little bit longer than what this is, just so we have a little bit of extra length. So we're coming down. I've got my fingers at an angle here. Again, we're not trying to create a severe angle, just enough where it flows nice. And you're gonna cut up into your previous guide. So that'll just swoop forward nice. Then we're gonna take our next section. Keep that angle and cut up into your guide. Then along her sides, I am cutting a little bit more blunt versus the back, just because there tends to be less hair along the sides. I always say this with a mannequin, but like on human hair, you might be able to notice it a little bit more. So that way it evens out a little bit more. And then we've got our last piece here, which we probably won't have anything to cut because again, we were evening it out to where that top layer was. Just barely. Oh yeah, this is gonna be much better as far as taking out that separation. So I'm gonna cut her other side first, and then we're gonna do the layers and do her face frame, and then keep moving on. And again, still do the angle moving forward. So because you're on the other side of the head, I've got my fingers are angled down now rather than before it was my knuckle. And just cut right up into your guide. And now I am doing her on a side part. If you have your hair, if you wear it a different part or down the middle, you know, just adjust it to wherever you wear your part. Okay, so we've got her other side cut, and before I do the layers, I'm gonna go ahead and spin her forward to check her fronts to make sure that they're lining up. So in person, you would stand in front of the client. I'm trying not to block the camera for you guys, but you would just come in and you'd bring it straight to center. You could adjust it a little bit to where they part their hair. You're not really going wrong with either way, but you'll come, bring it down, see if you need to cut anything, and then even that out first before you do your layering. So she looks just tiny bit longer right here to me, so I'm just gonna snip that. All right, perfect. Okay, so for her sides, you wanna remember that we wanna keep this as full looking as possible because it is a lob. That is a big perk of a lob. You keep it nice and full, but we still wanna create some light shape. So I'm gonna come right at her ear here, and I'm gonna be doing them very similar to how I did the back, where I'm bringing everything up and I'm twisting, but because we want to preserve more weight here, we're really, really over directing back, and it probably won't be taking out much at all. I'll double check a lot of this once it is dry, but we're coming completely back, like really over direct it. And we're just twisting up, and I'm just barely cutting into this. So it's literally kind of taking off nothing, but it does help remove a little bit of like excessive bulk without removing the weight, if any of that makes sense. So again, you're coming all the way up, really get some good tension with the fine side of your comb. You're coming back and twist and just cut lightly into that little top hair that sticks out. And then I'm not gonna do that because this is her face frame, so we're gonna leave that, but we're gonna do it on this side. Straight up, twisting, all that hair is falling, so you're not jeopardizing that perimeter, and cut. Much better. Okay, so at this point, you could opt to go in and tweak any of the face framing pieces. I know I'm gonna have to cut a little bit on this side because when we started, she was naturally a little longer there from her previous cut. But because I don't wanna take out more than what's needed, I'm gonna opt to wait to do that once it's dry. So I'm gonna get her dry first, do a really nice full blowout, and then we'll go through our cut and see where we need to tweak and dry cut. Do you like volume, Alicia?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So we're gonna be doing root lifter volume mousse. I am gonna spritz her down again just so I can get the most lift in her blow dry, and then we'll do a bunch of our dry cutting. Okay, so actually before I do the rest of her blow dry, I forgot this very important step that I love to do on clients with finer hair that wanna see some volume, but they don't want like a ton of, they don't like the idea of those thinning shears like I was mentioning earlier. What you'll wanna do is you're gonna come in through the top area. So I will take a section, you don't wanna be like right where their hair splits here at their crown. So I'll come in right under it. And you're gonna push that out of the way. And what we're gonna do is just take some sections of our hair, we're gonna pull them straight up. With your scissors, you're literally gonna come in and just nick the hairs closer to the scalp. And so what this does, especially with finer hair, it allows for you to create a little bit of texturizing, but you're not taking out so much hair. And because it's very little, you don't have like the line that gets created if you were to take texturizing shears all the way up here, but it just creates a little bit softness, helps give a little bit more volume for your clients who want to see some lift there, but don't want the commitment of a texturizing shear. This is not something I recommend trying to do on your own though at home. So if you cut your own hair at home, you could try it. I don't recommend it. You need a stylist who is familiar with it, because if you pull your scissors down too low, you're cutting off the hair. So if you're a stylist, you really just pull it straight up, open up your scissors just a little bit, and you just go in and lightly glide. You don't ever wanna close your scissors. And the reason why I'm doing this before I blow dry is because it's gonna help with a little bit more body because the hair will be removed. I'm gonna do a little bit on this side because she parts her hair over here. Okay, and now we'll go back to our blow dry. Okay, so we have got her dried and styled and she's already looking so much better. We've got a light angle going towards the front, just ever so slightly. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have Alicia look at it first to let me know if she wants me to bring up the back any, because this is where it's nice having a real model. Normally I would just do whatever because of a mannequin, but because we have real feelings, I'm gonna give you the mirror and I'll spin you around. Okay, so go ahead and find yourself. And then if you want me, because like right now when it's at a side here, you have a little bit of angle, but I feel like you could maybe just lightly right here. But if you don't want me to do that, I don't have to. And you'll go through.
What do you think?
I would just barely.
Yeah.
Just because right now it's a little too, I don't like to say too heavy because you probably want it to be like thick and full, but it'll just help to show the camera. It's like this little guy right here, it kind of will pop out. So you get a dip that just barely bringing that up is gonna help define it more. It won't be a lot of length at all. So what I'm gonna do to do that is just separate her ear to the front and just clip it out of the way. I don't need to twist it up, and I'll do the same on the other side. So it's really just this last little bit. So I'm just gonna clip the back up again. And so like I said at the beginning, I thought maybe I might need to bring it up more, but I like to see it dry because the client might not wanna bring it up. So it's always better to leave a little bit more length and have to go back and take off rather than it's too short and they're upset. So the way that I like to do this is I'll just come in and I'm gonna go scissor over comb actually, because I know it's only this last little bit. And I'm just gonna cut right into that. Oh, that is perfect already. Look down all the way for me. And look normal. And then I'm just gonna continue to do this through her back, and then still small enough sections that you can see your guide, but they don't have to be like as small as your original cut. Just take that hair out, scissor over comb, let some of that perimeter fall. And cut. And so now when you're at your top, we're almost gonna bring it out like a layer per se. And we're gonna keep our hands at an angle I can see underneath here. So what we're gonna do is just lightly connect these shorter pieces that we cut to your top layer. So you're kind of coming almost straight out with it from the head, and you're gonna just lightly angle your fingers to follow a guide up. And just cut into that softly. You don't necessarily have to completely remove all this length. You just want to soften it up. Got a little extra length here I need to blend in this corner. And I'm just gonna lightly pull out and point cut into this. So one thing with any lob bob haircut, after you do have it dry, you definitely want to have your client look down multiple times like this to get rid of any hairs that might like to poke out. It's just the way the nape sort of a lot of times falls, and you don't want your client walking around and then you see like these little hairs poking out. So always make sure to check for that. So now we will let our sides down, and I'm just gonna blend in. So I'm just gonna blend in the back and the sides a little bit, make sure that they're still matching fine. Maybe just barely this little baby corner. Okay, so I have raised her back a little bit more, and now all we're gonna do is I'm gonna come in. She originally, with her face framing on this one side, it was a little bit longer from her previous haircut. It's very, very similar now, but I'm just gonna come in and lightly even it out. Again, we're not trying to create any sort of swoop, but she had a little bit more of a swoop on this side, so I need to just lightly blend it, because if you pull these forward, it's just a little off here. And that's super simple and easy. It's just like this tail corner, so I'm just gonna come forward with it, twisting, and just take off that very front nip. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and get her set for her afters, and we'll get you guys out of here. Here we have our finished look. So much fuller everywhere by bringing up that length to create that nice lob. There's no more disconnect in Alicia's layers. We have that slight angle, so it's staying true to the lob shape, but we put in just enough movement with those long minimal layers, so that way she has nice shape all around. I hope you all enjoyed today's tutorial. Be sure to let me know in the comments if you would like to see more of these types of videos, and I will see you guys next week.